Welcome to Keeping Score. I'm Rick Horrow. Each week we bring you insights from the playmakers, deal makers, and rule makers in the world of sports. I'll give you my take on some of the items of the week using my 30 years of experience doing deals for teams, leagues, and players in the $750 billion business of sports. Plus, we'll talk with a central figure in the sports world. The views expressed in this podcast are my own and do not represent the views of Reuters. Let's get started. Golf season again for those of us who play. National Golf Foundation, a big study as part of a legislative initiative to try to get more support for golf. About $35 billion in revenue from golf courses, about $26 billion in tourism spending, golf community, $7 billion in spending, $4 billion for charity, which is big. So the whole idea of the demise of golf is overstated, especially as we see flowers that'll turn into summer heat. The digital editor globally for Reuters, Dan Colarusso, how are you?
Flowers in the summer heat, that's awfully poetic.
Metaphorical.
It's fantastic.
Well.
Yeah, they shouldn't have a much tough time getting a golf legislation through with the current administration, right?
Yeah, I mean, even though I'm not quite sure if
it would seem like a no-brainer.
Well, his score may not be his score, but that's another entirely different issue.
That's a story. Yeah, no, I think the golf business, has hit a crossroads. I think it's easy to look at it and say it's not what it used to be because there's not the Tiger, there's not the big names, there's not the growth. But I think you hit points of ebbs and flows in any cycles, So I think this cycle, golf has to come out of it, being a bit more populist. What's on their side, and you will hear it in your interview, and they don't say it explicitly, but with zero interest rates, big companies can afford to do golf development. It's very tied to the U.S. real estate market, and you find spots that are undervalued, and that quickly becomes very, very valuable content, for lack of a better term. So it's interesting. The business has a good crossroads. I think worthwhile to talk about as a commercial topic, right?
Commercial topic, and also all the things that it does. We kind of highlighted it just at the top of this about tourism, home construction, etc. But the study that was done to use as a basis for this support is about 2 million jobs, and about 60 billion in wages and benefits. So corporations deal with this, they expand, they grow, and kind of a unique story, and he'll tell it to you firsthand. Ben Pratt, the VP of Corporate Public Affairs for the Mosaic Company. They have a very interesting company. They're one of the world's largest potash developers, phosphate, potash. When you mine, you got a guy who's interested in golf, you dig deep holes, you don't know what to do with those holes, hey, let's build golf courses. Ben Pratt, Mosaic Company, will come back right after his interview. We always talk about sports and development, and those of you who are golfers, you appreciate sports, development, phosphate mining, amazing golf courses, a real estate story you can't believe, and a course that you really, and a course and resort you can't believe, all of that wrapped into the Mosaic Company. Ben Pratt, the VP of Corporate Public Affairs for Mosaic, with an interesting story. How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Rick?
I'm wonderful, thank you. I hear you're in cold Minnesota, and by the way, in Florida, I don't know if you know, but it's now 85 or 90 degrees. So Streamsong Black opens to the public. You got a couple of other courses, Streamsong Red, Streamsong Blue. Talk about the courses a little bit, then we'll talk about the company.
Yeah, absolutely. The courses are, well, to start, it's the only place in the world where courses designed by three of the hottest architects in the game today are present, and those are Core Crenshaw, the red course, Tom Doak's blue course, and the new Gil Hance designed black course, which opened to great fanfare just last fall. It's a unique development. The site is in the middle of central Florida. It's formerly mined phosphate land, and the geography, the landscape, if you will, is very unusual because it is land that was mined and then left in its sort of churned up state long before we had the responsibility to put land back the way we find it when we mine it now. And so what that presented was a really interesting landscape, a sort of blank canvas for the game's best architects to build truly unusual, truly unique golf courses. And I think the reception all those courses have received from golfers and media alike has demonstrated that they're some of the best out there.
And it's a bigger story, too. Mosaic, the world's largest combined producer of phosphates and potash and plant nutrients. But as you said, you got to dig it up from somewhere. You've been a publicly traded company since 2004 and a Fortune 500 company. And so you take the tonnage, you've got a guy or guys who are golf enthusiasts, and now you have one of the best sets of resorts or the best sets of courses in the world. Hell of a story, huh?
It's a truly unique story, Rick. It harkens back to a senior executive at Mosaic named Rich Mack, who had the vision and the drive to get this thing done. And it truly is a remarkable story to take what. It's hard to imagine that land if you haven't been in a sort of unoccupied part of Central Florida. It was pretty much untouched for decades after it was mined. And so to envision a world-class golf resort there, it was a pretty remarkable vision. And we decided to do it as a company, even though it's got nothing to do with our business, right? We are not in the golf business. We're in the agriculture business. We make fertilizer for farmers around the world. But we decided to do it for several good reasons. One, it's in the middle of a pretty sparsely populated area that's a little short on jobs, and so we realized that we could develop an economic base for the community, and that's worked well. We've got several hundred people working at the resort, not counting 200 professional caddies who work there every day.
And by the way, they all read the greens really well.
I'm sure. I'll be sure they get that message.
Yeah, please. Give them that.
And then, we also developed a significant tax base, a bed tax base from the lodging part of the business for that community that's been economically important. And on top of all that, it's been a very useful project to demonstrate just what we can do with all this land we've mined in the past, the productive use we can put it to.
So obviously you are a jobs-centric company with your 15,000 people working to serve agricultural customers in 40 countries around the world. And as you said before, jobs means something to you, and you can translate it economically, and hence the county and the state benefit significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have 3,500 employees in Florida today, still doing phosphate mining and manufacturing in that same general region of Central Florida. And so this is an important element of our ability to demonstrate that we're a good neighbor and that we can make good use of all this land once we've walked away from it.
Is the investment of Streamsong as a golf investment? You already said it's not your core business. We know that. But has it been economically successful for you guys from an ROI perspective? Is it for awareness? Is it for giving back? What are the goals, and are you meeting them?
Yeah, all those things. The resort now, with the completion of the Black Golf Course, we feel like the resort is fully developed, at least for now. We've got 3 great golf courses, a lodge, and 228 rooms, and a bunch of other amenities that people can use. And so it's just now gotten to the point of what we would consider full development, so that it can demonstrate its economic potential, its performance potential, and it's doing very well. Our occupancy rates are high. The golf courses are very close to maxed out, and so the investment is working quite well as we've gotten to full development. But beyond that, it's about jobs. It's about demonstrating to the local communities that all this land that we have access to and that we mine, we can do that responsibly, and that we can put it back to good use. This particular tract looks like it does, and I know you've been there, Rick, to play some golf. It looks like it does because we didn't have a regulation in the 70s when we finished mining this land, to put it back the way we found it. And so it was essentially not usable land until this vision came about. And now to take it from a place that was inhabited primarily by critters you don't want to see, it is now a gleaming example of a world-class resort that is a great source of pride in the communities down there.
Guarantee you, if you looked at the place before and after, the before didn't lend itself to a visionary perspective of what a resort looks like, but you guys pulled the dirt and got it done. What other golf destinations did you consider as models in the early phases of Streamsong's development?
Well, I wasn't involved in the earliest phases of it, so I'm not familiar with the models we used, but we certainly wanted it to be able to compete with the very best of the destinations in the U.S. And so you look at a place like Bandon Dunes and some of the other places where the architects like Ben Crenshaw and Bill Corr have come together to build some of the finest new golf courses in the world. And we knew that it really came down to the golf course architecture as a starting point, and then the building architecture by Albert Alfonso. The architects, we knew we wanted those kinds of people, the very best in the business, and we knew that those specific architects, the guys who built these three great golf courses, knew how to deal with a site like that and how to see a golf course amidst this incredible sort of landscape of tropical flora and fauna and animals.
Flora, fauna, and animals, and if it's up to you guys, you're going to protect it. You have a strong corporate responsibility and commitment in global environment sustainability, as you would hope you would as an international company that's concerned with mining valuable metals and et cetera in the ground. The track record of environment a factor when you're interviewing the roster of designers who work with you to develop the property?
Yeah, to a certain extent it sure was, and you're right that we're very much committed to good stewardship of natural resources in all our businesses around the world, and have to acknowledge there that our businesses obviously have impact on the environment. We're miners, and so it's about minimizing and taking care of all the resources as best we can. If you look at the properties, what we ended up with and what we knew we would get with these designers are not typical of many other resort-style golf courses. They, we emphasize walking. We built golf courses with just really one cut of grass anywhere. There's no rough, so it minimizes the maintenance. The fairways end, and then you've got natural areas, so we're minimizing impact there. And there wasn't as much need to move around the natural environment as you would have expected for a site like this. So there's no irrigation outside areas of actual golf play. We don't have.
I'm sorry, but it's also your sustainability as far as maintenance is concerned and keeping the legacy. At certain times of the year, carts we know are not allowed. Is this part of the resort's focus on sustainability as well?
It is, and one of the founding principles of the resort was walking golf. We're big proponents of walking golf, and so the courses were designed with that in mind. One of the primary limiters for any golf course to walking, and especially at resorts, is distance between greens and tees. So all the designers were asked to and did keep those distances to a minimum, and the golf courses are a great walk. And one of the important things about sustainability at a resort like that is having outstanding grass quality year-round for golfers to play. The busiest season for us there, of course, is winter, when the grass in that part of Florida, the Bermuda grass we have planted, really isn't growing. And so driving a lot of golf carts around on that grass when it's not actively growing, it can be pretty damaging. And so we've decided to limit golf course activity for those winter months when there's not much growth, and then emphasize walking golf year-round with the help of the professional caddies we have on site.
You got the black course open last fall. What's next?
Well, we believe the resort is a state where it can be self-sustaining with the assets it's got. We fully recognize that what's really important in this business is delivering a great experience every time a group of golfers or other visitors, business meeting attendees, or whoever comes. We want them to have a great experience, and we want them to come back. And one of the critical things in this business about getting repeat visitors is continuing to get better. And so we'll always be looking for ways to get better, but for now, I think we're going to let the black course settle in and come to maturity, and we've got a couple of great, really fun amenities that go with it, including a 2-acre putting green called the Gauntlet. There's a lot to do, and we think there are ways that we'll continue to improve the place, but no other major projects on the horizon at the moment.
So Mosaic does much of its work outside the U.S., South America, a particular focus. Is there any thought of developing a stream song type property internationally?
You know, this is such a unique opportunity. And again, we're not in the golf business. We're not in the resort business. We're not even close to it as a core part of what we do. So I don't think that's likely. And it also, this was very site specific. As I've described the landscape as a great canvas for the game's best architects. So never say never to other developments, but this feels like more of a one-time thing for us.
Well, it's a one-time thing, but it's a big one-time thing. Ben Pratt, VP, Corporate Public Affairs, Stream Song, Mosaic, the entire project. You got to go see it. Mosaic, as you heard, has about 15,000 people talking about agriculture around the world, North America, Canada, Central Florida, Brazil, everywhere else. But it's more than that. It's how you turn effectively dormant and used property into a moneymaker from the recreational golf side. Dan, what's your takeaway from all this?
It's really an interesting. I think it's two interesting points. I'll try to be quick because I know you like when I'm quick. But
very much.
The idea of diversification. We had a guest on a few weeks ago who talked about sports franchise ownership as diversification for the super wealthy or for the industrialist individual. This is a company that's really tied to industrialization, right? And all of a sudden they're doing something that's way off the track of that, but leveraging resources, for lack of a better term. The other thing is, it is a very interesting bet on the U.S. economy, which is shifting more toward a service sector, leisure sector model, and away from broad-scale industrialization. And that's kind of an interesting take, too. So Mosaic turning, the headline I wrote for this podcast, I wrote it already because it was such a good interview, was old mine to gold mine. And I think that's kind of an interesting way for a company to, leverage assets, take an asset that might be wasting and actually add value to it in a totally different arena, right?
They have 28 million tons of operational capacity for finished concentrated phosphate for potash production. I got to tell you, when we did this interview and I looked at their 3 courses and the resort that they're dealing with, 80% capacity, tee times booked. You don't know what I'm talking about because you're not a golfer, but I will tell you that it is just absolutely gorgeous. It looks like Scotland. It's in Central Florida, and who'd have thunk it? And it's a combination of the belief in the economy plus an incredibly entrepreneurial story. And I guess in the future, when we have discussions about golf and business and too much property and what to do with it and are there better uses for property, you got to keep this in mind because it's all about how entrepreneurial you can be in the future, whatever business you're in, right?
Well, I think we've just made history on keeping score. You are the first person ever to compare Central Florida to Scotland.
Yeah,
and congratulations on that. But and look, I don't think the answer to economic blues in this country in pockets of underdeveloped and under and economically stressed areas is necessarily golf course development. But in this one particular case, the stars seem to have aligned, and we'll see in 5 years, or we'll see. I don't know what the leverage is on this. I don't know the financing underneath the deal, if there is it. You don't know what happens, right? But that said, it does seem to be very commonsensical in an unorthodox way.
Brazil, Saskatchewan, headquarters in Plymouth, Minnesota, around the world, and yes, Central Florida. Good comments, good perspective. Ben Pratt, Rick Horrow, see you soon. Thanks for listening to this edition of Keeping Score. Our producer, Alex Cohen, associate producer, Freddie Joyner, assistance provided by Carlos Swadek, Tanner Simpkins, Jesse Leeds, and Jamie Swimmer, and the executive editor of Reuters Digital, Dan Colarusso. I'm Rick Horrow. Thanks again for listening. See you next time on Keeping Score.